Gave way to this dramatic rescue yesterday as volunteers were caught in the raging currents. The rushing water here in Georgetown, Colorado actually pulled 2 volunteer firefighters into a swollen creek. Now, just before the torrent pulled the men under a bridge, rescuers were able to grab them and lift them from the creek. They were taken to a local hospital and treated for hypothermia and minor injuries. Now, the rain, the swollen creek here in Colorado near Georgetown, unlike in the east, is due to snowmelt flooding. There's been a big warm-up in the Colorado high country recently. The high country snowpack is melting rapidly, and that causes high water. And that water is extremely cold as it runs off the snowpack, 30s and 40s. You can imagine if you fall into that water, that hypothermia is a distinct possibility. Now, of course, if you get some rain, that's going to aggravate the snowmelt flooding. And we do think that later over eastern and central Colorado, thunderstorms will fire much as they did yesterday and produce locally heavy rain. Right now, the action is just south of the Wyoming border and over near the Kansas-Nebraska border in terms of significant thunderstorms. Most of the action's out here under these, under these bright white clouds in Kansas, Oklahoma, and southwestern sections of Nebraska. What we have is an upslope flow, low-level moist air. In the upper levels, a low-pressure trough over the Continental Divide, and that spells unsettled weather in the Rocky Mountain region today. Meanwhile, west of the Divide, look at how clear skies are near Salt Lake and especially Phoenix, close to Barstow Needles, and around San Francisco and Sacramento, up towards the Pacific Northwest. Weather story here is a ridge of high pressure, an offshore flow in California. That means triple-digit heat in the Central Valley. No delta breeze or sea breeze for Sacramento. You folks will be 100 degrees plus. And in the Southern California desert, southern Arizona, high temperatures today 100 and teens. So Seattle looks nice by comparison, 79 and mostly sunny. Afternoon sunshine in Los Angeles, 86. Denver scattered thunderstorms, a high today of 68. And some of those storms near Denver could potentially be severe. Again, with that upslope surface wind, southwest winds aloft, that shearing mechanism sometimes sets up slow-moving severe thunderstorms along the Front Range. They could pop up again today. Looks pretty wet in the east today, at least in terms of hit-and-miss thunderstorms. Well, where they organize in the mid-Atlantic, Ohio Valley, and south, they will drop heavy rain, small hail, vivid lightning, that sort of thing. And while it's not so wet as compared to yesterday in Florida, more thunderstorms are expected to fire near Fort Myers, Punta Gorda, Port Charlotte, Sarasota, and Miami. Could be an inch or more of additional rainfall in South Florida. Heavy rains also could develop in the Susquehanna and Shenandoah Valley high country of West Virginia, and from near Kirksville, Missouri to Springfield and out in West Texas, some big-time thunderstorms may rumble through Amarillo, Dalhart, Lubbock, and Midland, Odessa today. 60s, 70s, and 80s. That'll be most common for a high temperature, but near Chicago and Dallas it'll be in the 90s, and that sizzling summertime heat will be back in the southwest. Now, if you want to cool down, the Rockies tonight, 30s and 40s, while as we head back east, we find mostly 60s and 70s. Now, how about weather-related travel headaches?
Okay, let's check on the highways and byways for you. National radar will show you where we have most of the rain this morning. Of course, that will slicken the highways and byways for you. So we've had some scattered showers in Pennsylvania and some embedded thunder showers here. Locally heavy rains over the Dakotas. Earlier we had reports of the rain falling at the rate of about 1/2 of an inch an hour in North Dakota. And you can see the rain showers and some thunder showers in Kansas and Oklahoma. So just about everywhere east of the Rockies, we cannot rule out the threat of a rain shower, maybe a thunder shower here and there. But west of the area, and that's when skies become clearer, Rick. And as you mentioned, the temperatures will be warming up for much of the west.
I noticed a few spots right near San Francisco yesterday where typically there's a nice cool sea breeze, but they were in the upper 90s yesterday. So it's really hot.
Yeah, it's going to be much of the same today. Stay with us. Coming up in just a moment, we'll check on the tropics and see if we have anything brewing tropical-wise. Don't go away.
Marathon Fuel. It brings out what your car was meant to be. Right now, fill up with Marathon Premium and get a free 2-liter of Pepsi. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see the great mileage you get from Marathon. Come in for your free Pepsi now.
It is now about 13 minutes before the hour, and you know at this time every hour we give you the very latest on the tropics. See what's going on? It is tropical season, and we got off to a fairly active early tropical season. You know, just the third day in tropical season, June 3rd, we were dealing with a hurricane, Hurricane Allison, well, actually was a tropical storm for most of its lifetime, and then it became a minimal hurricane before making landfall. But remember, it developed in the Western Caribbean, and climatologically speaking, these are the areas that we've focused our attention throughout the month of June for tropical development, either in the Western Caribbean or the Western Gulf of Mexico, as over the last 100 years, most of the storms have developed in this area. So this is why we really focus our attention on this area, because as we look back in history, has been most active in these regions. Now, here's a list of our 1995 Atlantic hurricane tropical storms, and you can see Allison, we've already dealt with that one, and then Barry will be the next one. Then we'll go down the list to Chantal and Dean, and hopefully we won't get as far as Karen or Lewis, and even the lower names here, Sebastian and Tanya. Or Tanya. Let's take a look at the satellite picture and see if we have anything going on across the Atlantic. Well, we've been watching a few things, but nothing very interesting, nothing too disturbing so early in tropical season. We've been watching the west coast of Africa, and a few disturbances have come up. And actually, this one looks quite impressive with a lot of outflow with it, but it is so far north, and we don't think that this will develop into anything, so we don't really worry about this all that much. We have an old frontal boundary that has already pushed off the east coast, and you can see it's centered out here across the central Atlantic. Perhaps we'll bring some squally weather to Bermuda, and you can see the tail end of it still kind of flaring up too. And we've been watching this little trough of low pressure just off the coast of Florida. The tail end of this has started to flare up too, and perhaps some squally weather over the Yucatan Peninsula and the western parts of Cuba here. But most of the Caribbean is in the clear, so if you're planning a trip over the Caribbean, you're going on a cruise, it looks pretty good over the Leeward Islands, the Windward Islands, around Aruba, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, Jamaica, looking pretty good. A little farther west of the area, though, and that's when you run into the squally weather again in western Cuba. The Gulf of Mexico is pretty void of any tropical development either. You can see pretty much clear as a bell, especially in the western Gulf. Let's keep going west then as we cross over Central America and southern Mexico. You can see right along the intertropical convergence zone. That's where the trade winds come together, actually, and you get the lifting of the air, and some thunder showers have developed here. But actually, it's been fairly quiet for the East Pacific, too, so far this tropical season. So when you look at the general scope of things in the tropics, it is pretty tranquil. So let's check on your forecast now and see what's expected if you're planning outdoor activities today. Here's a look at the midday hour, and all eyes are focused on the frontal boundary as it moves through the southern plains and this weak trough of low pressure. Now that's at the surface, but in the upper levels of the atmosphere we have a weak area of low pressure, and that will just enhance the thunder shower activity. More rain showers are possible from our nation's capital back into Philadelphia, even Pittsburgh, around Cincinnati too. Concentrated, perhaps heavier rains back into Missouri and Oklahoma right along the tail end of this frontal boundary. But I'd say 2/3 of the nation looking at thunderstorm activity today, and that's anywhere east of the Rockies. You go west of the Rockies and it's dry. You'll run into clearer skies, no measurable amounts of precipitation expected, and actually it's really going to start to heat up. We talk about the deserts of the Southwest, 110, 115 degrees. Not out of the question around Yuma, Arizona, Blythe, California, Death Valley in California. Even some of the heat will be transported to the coast with those offshore breezes. You won't get the sea breeze that usually keeps you a little cool for the west coast. So prepare for the heat. I'm going to head to the beach, as temperatures again are expected well into the 90s and 100s and even triple-digit heat in those typical hot spots. Overnight temperatures in the 30s and 40s over the Intermountain West, but look at all the mild air in place for the morning hours for the Mississippi Valley and much of the East Coast, with afternoon highs well into the 60s and 70s. That's a look at your forecast for your weekend. Stay with us because coming up in just a moment we have a look at the traveling trouble spots for you. Now with all the thunder shower activity expected today for the eastern half of the country, you better believe that you'll run into some slick highways and byways if you have travel plans. So stay with us because we'll pinpoint some of those highways and byways for you in just a moment.
In war, the wrong kind of weather can be a sentence of death. When a weather report is a life and death issue. The weather has historically turned the tide in epic battles. See how weather forecasting played a strategic role in World War II, and hear from a meteorologist who gave the forecast for victory. Watch Forecast for Victory, Sunday, June 25th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific, only on the Weather Channel.
And now it's time for the Michelin Drivers Report, brought to you by Michelin and your participating Michelin dealers.
Okay, we wake up this morning, scattered showers over the southern parts of Pennsylvania. We even have some scattered showers around the nation's capital this morning. So be careful. Some of these interstates will give you problems. 95, even Interstate 80, 79 through West Virginia. Back into Tennessee, a rainy travel extensive over the southeast and the southern and central plains throughout the afternoon. Might even have to deal with some strong to severe storms for the afternoon hours. Missouri, eastern Iowa, even the Rio Grande of Texas and eastern New Mexico. You want to prepare for the threat of severe weather throughout the day today into the evening hours. So definitely you want to keep it here tuned to the Weather Channel. If you live in the orange or red zones, we'll be here all day showing you radars. Of course, as soon as thunderstorms develop, if we get the watches or warnings from the National Severe Storms Forecast Center, we'll pass it on to you firsthand and keep you updated and let you know that you need to take the necessary precautions. But these are the areas where there's a good chance of strong to severe storms. So if you live in these areas, keep it here tuned to the Weather Channel periodically throughout the day.
It's a breakthrough that brings us to a new level.
And a good Saturday morning. Thanks for joining us here at the Weather Channel. Will Annan along with Rick Griffin. And once again, you're just in time for a look at Weather Center, which is sponsored this go around by GMC. And of course, we're talking about Halloween, and for much of the country, it's going to be a very, very pleasant Halloween night.
Especially in the southeast where the dry, mild weather continues. But the northeast will be cool, and the plains will have a lot of shower and thunderstorm activity. West Coast looks pretty nice, and of course, we continue to follow Tropical Storm Mitch in Central America right now.
We'll have more of that coming up. Let's take a look at what's happening as we take a look at the states right now, the lower 48. And once again, we're going to talk about some moisture in the middle part of the country. There's been a lot of rainfall overnight in parts of Kansas, Oklahoma, northwestern Texas, even eastern New Mexico. And some of these areas have also been looking at some severe weather all the way from eastern New Mexico and parts of Texas. Some tornadoes have been reported. And we could be looking at more strong to severe thunderstorms breaking out over the southern plains a little bit later on today. If you live in the northeast, you can see this big spinning area of low pressure right around Nova Scotia. That is backing its way west and southwestward. And we're going to be looking at more moisture and more windy weather for New England today and maybe for the next 3 or 4 days, because that system over the northeast will be slow to move as you look at the next several days. And there it is. We will continue to watch the rain begin to increase again and work its way west-southwestward. One thing is going to be for sure, these tightly packed isobars will mean a lot of wind for the northeastern part of the country for much of the upcoming weekend. We'll show you what's happening right now as far as the temps. Again, not so bad thanks to cloud cover. It could be a lot worse. It has been worse during the last couple of weeks. But Boston right now, 47 degrees, another breezy day in store. The Big Apple, New York City, 45, where the winds have really slackened off, and we're looking at some clearer skies and light and variable winds. Now we pick up the 20s. Elmira, 29 degrees. Rochester beginning to break out in parts of New Mexico. We'll have more on that coming up on Travel-Wise right after this. And a good
700.
You know, it looks like some of that rain's going to hit right about the time of the morning rush.
Colin, you think we might lower the temperatures?
Well,
Those kids are going to have to really bundle up.
And down towards the southeast. But a cool morning will eventually give way to a very pleasant afternoon across most of the region. Good morning, I'm CHERYL LEMKE.
And I'm Rick Griffin, but not all places in the southeast region will enjoy you wear in just a moment. But first a look at what you can expect today in the northeast. You can look forward to another nice day in Boston. Now the Weather Channel blimp That's right, the Weather Channel blimp made an appearance over the city skyline yesterday. Highs in Boston were in the low 80s on Thursday. Today will be warmer with a high of around 90, and there will be some high clouds, otherwise a lot of sunshine and comfortable humidity in the Boston area. However, you'll be dodging thunderstorms much of the day in the Lakeland, Florida area. Lakeland is just about midway between St. Petersburg and Orlando, and it's going to be muggy as highs hover around 90 degrees this afternoon. As you will agree if you live or visit in that area, it's typical summertime weather conditions. Well, on radar this morning, no rains in Lakeland or Orlando or Tampa or St. Petersburg, but just north of you there is a large area of precipitation, occasionally heavy as a matter of fact, and this thunderstorm cluster right here has been severe during the last half hour or so. In fact, there are 4 counties, Duval, Bradford, St. John's, and one other county up here in northeast Florida that are under severe thunderstorm warnings at the moment. Basically, what it looks like is happening is we have merging thunderstorm cells right here, and often that indicates the possibility anyway of severe thunderstorms developing, and these storms will be moving east-northeast at 20. Any of you from about St. Augustine northward to Jacksonville should get set for some pretty rough weather over the next hour to hour and a half. That includes frequent lightning, blinding rainfall, perhaps some large hail, and strong gusty winds. Well, you can see the unsettled weather here. And why is it so widespread? Well, we've got a stalled out front in North Florida and South Georgia, and that's a focusing mechanism where 2 dissimilar air masses are coming together, convergence of air masses and rising motion, and that's why we have widespread precipitation here in extreme South Georgia and North Florida. Now, as we head a little farther north, it is a completely different story. I know you know it's the first day of August, but it felt like the first day of October in some of the South this morning. As Asheville, now we've got to update Asheville because they dipped to 48 this morning. That was a record low temperature. It was 59 in Atlanta and 57 in Columbia, South Carolina, 56 in Augusta, Georgia. That was a record, as well as the 56 in Greensboro, North Carolina, and the 63 in Myrtle Beach, a record for this first day of August. 66 in Charleston, still 61 in Atlanta, while it's 75 in New York City and 73 in Boston. By comparison, there's still high pressure over the northeast, and the satellite picture confirms that some high, thin, wispy clouds moving in out of the northwest. Today should be another pleasant day in the northeast and mid-Atlantic region. But what about the west? Let's find out. Here's Cheryl.
Now, some of the heaviest rain today will fall in New Mexico, where monsoonal rains are typical this time of the year. But some places across the state will get a chance to dry out. Well, this was a scene yesterday in Albuquerque, New Mexico, as downpours caused street flooding, making the morning commute quite difficult. And conditions, though, did improve, however, as the day progressed and skies turned sunny. And things will continue drying out today as highs reach into the mid-80s. Well, overall, though, the weather pattern has been quite active across the west. Numerous showers and thunderstorms broke out yesterday afternoon and evening, but then during the wee hours of the morning, a lot of those thunderstorms dissipated and broke apart. We still have some thunderstorms, though, rumbling over towards southern fringes of British Columbia, some thunder showers, too, for Wyoming. And we've also had some rather nasty weather, too, across southeastern Nebraska. The rains continue right now. Actually, the rain pressing in from eastern Nebraska into western Iowa. There's been a batch of rain from Sioux City, Iowa, down towards just west of Omaha, on into Wilbur, and on into around the just west of Lincoln area of Nebraska, around Grand Island and around Hastings. Now, if you're doing some traveling this morning, that could pose some problems for Interstate 80, as it may be rather wet and slippery in some spots. Now, besides Nebraska, though, a large part of the west will stay rather unsettled, as again we have that moist monsoonal flow coming in, and that will be triggering some hit and miss showers and thunderstorms. They'll more or less be concentrated east of Interstate 5, back over towards the Bitterroot Mountains, even back on into Colorado. It could be rather wet. So if you're vacationing in Colorado, maybe heading over towards the Telluride Jazz Festival later on today, or maybe checking out the Indian ruins around Chimney Rock, grab the rain gear just to be on the safe side, because you might be encountering some of those scattered showers and storms. Again, the reason for the wet scenario is the fact that we have that moist monsoonal flow, Winds coming up from the southeast, pumping in that moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. And along with that, though, we've also had a series of disturbances cutting across the west. So this is helping to enhance the showers and the thunderstorms. But at least back into California, it should be nice today. Lots of sunshine for San Francisco and Sacramento, southward towards Los Angeles and San Diego. And this morning, temperatures mainly 50s and 60s. Mainly some 60s, those we head towards the heartland, 67 for Sioux Falls. Minneapolis, St. Paul at 68 degrees. And good morning for those of you in Chicago. Temperatures around Skokie and Evanston in the mid-60s. How about the rest of your day? Let's check out the forecast now with Rick.
All right, thanks a lot, Cheryl. In terms of Chicago, it'll be a little bit warmer and a little more humid for the Windy City today as the winds begin to pick up out of the southwest. Same deal for you folks in Milwaukee, Cedar Rapids, and Dubuque. Tennessee, Ohio Valley region, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast, you're still under the influence of this big high-pressure system. So after a cool morning, it'll be a warm, sunny, mainly dry afternoon. Look for rains heavy at times in the southeast and scattered storms from the Rocky Mountain region through the western sections of the Great Lakes. Now, in the northeast, again, high pressure. Look for sunny to partly sunny skies. The precipitation, you can see some over Michigan, but that's about it. 90 degrees or so near Poughkeepsie, Philadelphia, and also in Vienna, Virginia today, but it will be with comfortable humidity, dew points in the 50s. In the south, some rain for Georgia and Florida. Texas, though, will be hazy, hot, and humid with a high in the mid-90s around Dallas and Waco later.
Well, if you're planning to leave on a trip, before you go, check with us for the weather that you need to know.
A look at road and airport conditions is next on TravelWise after your local forecast.
This is WeatherScope.
Well, a number of record lows this morning across the mid-Atlantic and down to the southeast. But a cool morning will eventually give way to a very pleasant afternoon across most of the southeast. Good morning. I'm CHERYL LEMKE.
And I'm Rick Griffin. Not all places in the southeast will enjoy the sunshine today. We'll show you where that will be in just a moment. First, a look at what you can expect in the northeast. And you can look forward to another nice day in Boston. You know, the Weather Channel blimp made an appearance over the city skyline yesterday. There it is. The high yesterday in Boston was low 80s, comfortable humidity. Today will be a bit warmer, and you'll lose the cumulus clouds and pick up some high thin clouds, and the high should be around 90 degrees. Though in Florida, you'll be dodging the thunderstorms all day, like in Lakeland here between St. Petersburg and Orlando. It's going to be a muggy day with a high around 90 degrees, and that, as you know, is pretty typical summertime weather anywhere in the Sunshine State. Well, looking at radar this morning, precipitation is already widespread in the northern half of Florida and extreme southern and southeast Georgia. It's raining steadily in Savannah, St. Mary's, Florida. It's raining and thundering at times in Jacksonville and St. Augustine, and you can see these big storms out here near Palatka and Stark. They have been severe from time to time. We watched, as a matter of fact, 2 thunderstorm cells merge right through here, and for a time there were severe thunderstorm warnings. And even without the storms at the severe limits, they are producing extremely heavy rainfall amounts, frequent lightning, and perhaps some small hail. Additional rain for you folks in Tallahassee, and even though the rain has ended in Pensacola, it's probably going to be back before the day is finished. You can see the cloud cover on the satellite. There's plenty of moisture in here. There's a surface front. There's cool, dry air coming down from the north, hooking up with some warm, moist air in the Gulf and over Florida, and where you have the 2 dissimilar air masses coming together, you've got convergence, the front rising motion in the atmosphere, and plenty of unsettled weather. Now let's go back to this high pressure center, which is unusually cool and dry for this time of the year. So you folks in Asheville dropped to, I believe it was 48, actually. That's a record. Greensboro, North Carolina, 56. Athens into the record books. Augusta, 2. Atlanta now, the official low, 58. That's a new record. And Wilmington, North Carolina at 61 degrees. So even though it is the first day of August, right here in the dog days of summer, it felt almost like just a hint of autumn in the air for many of you over the southeast this morning. At the very least, you turned off the air conditioner for a few hours. 63 in Atlanta, 77 right now in New Orleans, and it's in the mid-70s around New York City, but it's cooler inland in Albany and Pittsburgh and Charleston, West Virginia. Still a high-pressure ridge over the northeast. The satellite confirms that a lot of you have fair skies. These are high, thin, wispy clouds moving down. They'll dim the sunshine from time to time, but overall it looks like a pleasant day in the mid-Atlantic and northeast once again. Now let's go west. Here's Cheryl.
Well, some of the heaviest rain today will fall in New Mexico, where monsoonal rains are typical this time of the year. But some places across the state will also get a chance to dry out today. Now, this was the scene yesterday in Albuquerque, New Mexico, as heavy downpours caused street flooding, making the morning commute difficult. Conditions improved, however, as the day progressed, and skies eventually turned sunny. And things will continue drying out today as the high reaches into the mid-80s. Well, just like clockwork, yesterday during the heat of the afternoon, we saw showers and thunderstorms developing across the west, some rather potent. But luckily, during the wee hours of the morning, those thunderstorms dissipated, and right now looking kind of quiet across most of the west. A few scattered showers and thunderstorms, though, this morning coming out of British Columbia, some wet weather conditions, too, for Wyoming. And we've had some thunderstorm activity, too, for extreme southeastern Nebraska. While the rain continues to advance from the Cornhusker State into western Iowa, there's been some scattered rain near Sioux City, Iowa, and still some showers and thunderstorms, too, primarily west of Lincoln, around Grand Island and Hastings and Aurora, on into Wilbur, Nebraska. And speaking of Wilbur, Nebraska, today marks the beginning of a national CHECH festival. It's going to be held for about 3 days, continuing into the weekend. They're expecting about 40,000 people to be visiting Wilbur for that big CHECH festival, so it should be fun, but take the umbrellas with you, as you might be encountering some wet conditions. Now, besides Nebraska, Kansas and a large part of the west will stay rather unsettled, with this very moist monsoonal flow coming on in. And with all that moisture in place, combining with some upper air disturbances, that will set the stage for some scattered showers and storms. Now, as Rick was mentioning, we have high pressure camped across the eastern part of the country, but the clockwise flow of winds around the high pressure continue to draw up some of these disturbances. So again, don't be surprised to see some popcorn showers and thunderstorms scattered across the west. But at least California, we're calling for some nice weather conditions for you folks. A great day to head off to Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco. You'll be basking under a lot of sunshine and some pleasantly mild temperatures. Although interior valleys of California will be quite hot today, 90s and 100s. Currently, though, for San Francisco, 57, 63 for Los Angeles, 66 for Salt Lake City, and Denver at 63 degrees. Meanwhile, across the heartland, 63 as well for Duluth. A little bit warmer for Minneapolis at 68 degrees. In Chicago, you're looking beautiful today. You'll be seeing some sunshine around Grant Park and back over towards all around the O'Hare Airport, looking great today too. Temperatures right now mid-60s, but gradually warming into the 80s later this afternoon. Here's our forecast map then for later on. One troublesome area indeed will be across northern Florida. As Rick was showing us some very intense thunderstorms near Jacksonville, Florida, they'll be persisting. Here comes our trough of low pressure, though, diving in across the heartland, spreading a little swath of showers and storms. And again, the monsoonal moisture kicks in gear across the west. Come tomorrow morning, though, things will start to calm down for most of the country, but that trough of low pressure will promise to bring some scattered rains across the Ohio Valley and the eastern lakes. Now, some of the rain today will be locally heavy, maybe pockets of a ½ an inch to an inch of rain for parts of the Midwest. And do be prepared for some very heavy rains, too, plaguing northern Florida. And that could cause some serious problems if you're traveling maybe along Interstate 10. You'll be encountering some blinding downpours throughout the course of the day. Temperature-wise, though, still very pleasant throughout most of the east. The heat starts to get cranked up across the Plain States, but the Pacific Northwest, again, not looking too shabby today for Seattle or for Portland.
Well, before you leave on your trip, check with us for the weather you need to know.
A complete look at road conditions and what's happening at the airports is coming up next on TravelWise right after your local forecast.
Hey kids, Hard Hat Harry's back in a brand new video adventure. It's the fantastic real-life farm adventure for kids video. Join Hard Hat Harry and his friends on a fun-filled farm adventure to find out where fruits and veggies come from. Farming is a big job, and you'll see 30 big machines that farmers use to get the job done. See tough tractors with tremendous tires and colossal combines harvesting wheat and corn. Get things growing with amazing seed drills and even a manure spreader. Wait till you see the nutty way they harvest nuts. Wake up, Mr. Squirrel. Best of all, kids will have foot-stomping fun down on the farm. Real-life farm adventure for kids, originally sold for $19.95, is now $4.95 through the special TV offer. When you call, we'll also tell you about our free bonus video offer, the award-winning real-life giant construction equipment for kids. To order, you must be 18 years or older. Call the number on your screen.
When you're on the go, get the Weather Channel forecast from these sources. It's the same reliable information you get from us on TV, prepared by our 80 meteorologists. And now your local forecast.